All right, everybody, we're back and we're gonna learn how to do a double crust fruit pie right now. So this is going to be a simple crust on the bottom, filling in the middle, crust on top, and how to crimp those together, and just do a very, very simple crimp on those. So first thing I'm going to do, as you may have seen in a previous video, is just to roll out the bottom crust. So I'm gonna lightly flour this dough, and if it's very, very cold, I'm gonna do this. Ready? It is cold, and there is glassware under here. All right, here we go, ready to roll. All right, this will be for my bottom crust, and I'm gonna roll this out into a 12-inch circle because I'm using a 9-inch pie dish. You might want to go a little bit bigger if your pie tin is a deep dish. I don't love using deep dish pies because it's hard sometimes for the fruit to cook through all the way. I like to use deep dish if I'm making a quiche maybe, but fruit pies, it's tough unless you're pre-cooking the fruit, which I'll talk to you about in just a moment. If you have any questions at all about this process or about pies, you can email us at hotline@thegourmandiseschool.com. You can also visit our website. We have so many pie recipes on there, and everything from like a peach and rhubarb pie to buttermilk pie, which is my favorite. And then, yeah, just let us know if you have questions. Okay, so I'm rolling this out, applying pressure where there's a lot of thickness, and again moving my dough a quarter turn every time I do a pass up and down. Quarter turn up and down. My pie dough is really cold and I'm getting a workout here. And the reason that we're doing a quarter turn is so that we can keep this fairly circular, even though we're going to be trimming it with scissors, and that we know it's not sticking to our counter. This counter is a lot taller than I'm used to, and so it can be a little challenging. So sometimes if you're having a hard time, do this on your kitchen table and then use your body weight to just kind of push the dough, especially if you're challenged in the height department. Okay, and I have my handy dandy little 12-inch round parchment paper circle here. Thank goodness, we are ready to go. All right. So again, this came from the crust that we made with 4 cups of flour, a pound of butter, and then we flaked the butter into the flour and added just enough water for it to combine to make a very shaggy, loose dough, and we cut it in half and refrigerated it. So I've just worked with one of those halves, and it was in the fridge for about an hour. You can leave it overnight or for a few days. And this is going to be my bottom crust. Here we are. Pick this up. If you're nervous about it, use your rolling pin to pick it up like I showed you in the previous video. Pick it up, drop it in, and then roll out your top. I don't like to put the fruit in just yet, especially if the fruit's a little bit warm. We'll talk about fruit fillings in a moment. All right, maybe we'll do that while I show you how to roll out this top one. It's not any different. Here we are. I'm gonna give it a little bit of pressure to flatten it out. And I'm gonna start that center up, center down, quarter turn. Okay, so let's talk about fruit fillings while I'm doing this. Some people use cooked fruit, some people use raw fruit, but the most important thing when you're talking about fillings for pie is that you have enough starch to soak up the juices that the fruit is going to give off in the baking process. So when I'm doing blueberry pie, I will use fresh blueberries when they're in season, which they are just getting out of season right here, right now. And I would use blueberries right now, except that farmers markets were closed this week, so looking forward to tomorrow to get fresh blueberries. So the blueberry filling that I'm gonna use right now came from frozen berries. So when I'm using raw blueberries, I'll take the raw blueberries and add a little bit of cornstarch or flour, salt, and sugar, making sure that the blueberries are coated with starch, right? So if you have really tiny blueberries, they're gonna need a little bit more starch than if you're using the larger ones. It's really very simple. When it comes to frozen blueberries, I put the blueberries in a big pot and I bring them to a boil with a little bit of sugar, a little lemon juice, a little bit of salt, taste it and adjust. and I bring that to a boil. Okay, all those frozen blueberries to a boil, and then I take about a half a cup of water and a couple tablespoons of cornstarch, and I mix them up to make a slurry. And then once the blueberries are boiling, I pour a little bit of slurry in at a time, stirring while I'm doing this, until it just begins to thicken. And you'll need a different amount of that slurry for different kinds of blueberries. If you get this tiny wild frozen blueberries, then you're gonna need a little bit more than if you're using the larger blueberries, right? So I don't wanna give you an exact recipe. I want you to bring your blueberries to a boil, add just enough slurry of cornstarch and water, or flour and water, until it just begins to thicken up. And then you're gonna cool it, because if you put a warm fruit filling into a cold pie crust, it's gonna melt the butter and you won't get as flaky a pie. So I like to take my filling and pour it into a sheet pan like this, and about 15 minutes later, it's ready to use. Okay, here we are, almost there. Take my little chart here, perfect. All right, I'm gonna trim this, and then we're gonna be ready to assemble our double crust fruit pie. There we are. So excited for this. Okay. You don't have to be perfect, because you're going to trim the two pieces together in just a moment. So don't overthink it here. All right, we are ready to assemble. I'm going to move this out of the way. All right, here we go. I have my blueberry filling here. Again, this was blueberries, sugar, a little tiny bit of salt. Salt's really important. I added a little bit of orange blossom water because I happen to really love blueberries and orange blossom together. And then I tasted it and adjusted if I needed a little bit more sugar or not. And then I added that slurry of cornstarch. It's kind of like a paste. And I put it in just until I was able to stir and watch it thicken. And I poured it onto this sheet pan here. I'm adding this cooled filling here to my pie crust. Here we go. Almost there. And you can go tall if you want to. I leave it to you. I like to save a little bit of this for making ham pies later with all the little scraps. All right, here we are. I'm gonna put this one on top. And if you're nervous about picking up your pie dough, remember your pie crust should always be cold but pliable. So it feels cold, but you can bend it and it won't crack. And pick up with a rolling pin if you want to, and place it like so right on top of the fruit. Okay, so now I'm going to take these two pieces and trim them so they're the same size. I don't want to cut too much of the bottom layer off. The top one's a little bit longer than the bottom one. There we go. We're going to trim that all the way around so they're both at the same level here. There we go, almost there. And then we're going to be ready to fold and crimp. So this is going to follow the same methodology that we used to crimp the single crust pie, except now we're doing it with 2 layers of dough. And I really love that like thick, crunchy edge that's cooked all the way through that you get on a fruit pie. It's so good. Go around without warming up the butter too much, just gently, and make sure that the top isn't much longer than the bottom. Okay. So watch this. You're going to take these two pieces together, fold them over, and let them sit on the lip right here. You can flour your fingers if they feel a little sticky. Remember, the dough isn't the one with the problem. It's your hands that are the problem. So flour your hands rather than the dough. Fold those together like this all around the pie. There we go. All the way around. Here we are. And then back to where I started. I'm going to go around and make sure everything is nice and even. Okay, and I'm ready to crimp. So my blueberries are in there, nestled nicely. I'm going to flour my fingers and begin crimping. Again, I showed you all the different ways you can crimp a pie, and they all apply here. I'm going to take these 2 fingers here and pull them outside while I pull this index finger inside the pie, like so. Kind of leaving them in place. I'm trying not to pinch too much while I'm doing it. I'm just moving them in each other because I don't want to warm up the butter too much. I'm going to go all the way around. Again, flouring my fingers if I need to. There we go, all the way around the pie. Now, this is my favorite trick, and it'll be a gift to you later. When I'm baking pie, I always make two. When I'm doing these double crust fruit pies, and that's because it's really, really nice to have this unbaked, fully assembled in the freezer. And I bake it from the freezer into a hot oven immediately. So you want to put this in the freezer unwrapped or uncovered until it's frozen solid, and then wrap it so that you don't lose any of this like pretty edging. And I'm going to sharpen this up just a little bit all the way around. But it's nice to be able to be invited somewhere when this is all over, and somebody will say, oh, maybe you can bring dessert, and you're like, oh, yeah, I got this, not a problem. Turn on your oven to 425, 450, and take the cold frozen pie right out of the freezer and into that hot oven, and just watch the magic happen without having to like break a sweat in your kitchen. Before you bake this pie, you really do need to add something lovely to it. A little technical difficulty there. I like to brush this with milk and add a little sugar. And all double crust pie need a venting system. So you need to be able to create an escape hatch for the steam. You can do whatever pattern you like. I'll just show you real quickly what I do. I will first brush this with milk and then do a little bit of sugar because I like a little sugar on top of my crust, and then I'll make my markings, and that's because I don't want to do a marking and then cover it and seal it up with whatever I'm adding on top of the pie. But you could just very simply make a few of these lovely patterns however you like on your pie. I'm really terrible at getting things dead in the center, but your pies will always do better if you freeze them before baking them. Even if it's for an hour, you'll keep a lot more of the details on the pie intact if you just chill this before you bake it. So happy baking. I'm so glad you joined me. I'm going to do another quick one in a minute on lattice work, so you could do lattice on top of your pie. But in the meantime, have yourselves a great day and enjoy the process, and don't tell people you're baking a pie. Just do it, practice, and get better at it. Bye.